Hey Kyle, did you watch the debate?
The debate was on in my home. I was had decided to go ahead and have fun instead of sitting and watching it live. Um,
That was your mistake because you were playing D&D with me.
hey, hey, by all accounts, no matter how bad the D&D session was, couldn't have been worse than the debate.
I didn't. I've watched parts of it. My, my wife watched, and I watched some. I've consumed some of the immediate reaction to it, but quickly decided that wasn't going to work for me. And left, and that was our buddies at Morning Joe kind of drove me over the edge. So I had to stop watching. There was a particular interaction that I want to talk to you about where okay, so let me paint a picture for you. So Mika and Joe are the hosts of the show, if you don't know it, and they're husband and wife. And he was a Republican congressman, and she is like Democratic royalty. I think like her family's been like secretaries of state and stuff like that. And he started the show after the debate in a wildly self-serious, very earnest way, talking about how much he loved Joe Biden and how he would accept any challenge from any person to debate whether or not he's been an effective legislator as a president. But then, with with a metaphorical tear in his eye, he looked into the camera and stated that it was time to ask the question whether or not Biden should be replaced on the ticket after his performance in the debate. I understand his position. I'm not mad about his position. I disagree with his, but that bothered me, but it didn't set me off. I was not pushed over the edge. What came later is what bothered, which is where Mika suggested, with a little bit of an elevated voice, not yelling, but like speaking to be heard, that we don't panic. And then Joe was like, in classic kind of Joe, you'll reckon, I'm not even going to label it because I want people to identify for themselves what he was doing. Said, well, you're the one elevating your voice, hon. Let me stop you there. Nobody's panicking. We're just asking questions. And I wanted to reach I was listening to the audio from it at the time. I wanted to reach into my phone and throttle him for that bullshit. Because own your stuff, man. Like, you are suggesting that the Democratic Party consider changing its presidential candidate in July of the year of the election. That's panicking. I'm not, it's not always irrational to panic. If he wanted to sit there and say, I think it's time to panic, I would listen. But he's trying to do that thing where like he doesn't panic, but he's arguing for panic, and I just hate that shit. Your thoughts?
whenever whenever someone defaults to the we're just asking questions, it it immediately brings me to mind of Tucker Carlson, Fox News,
Hmm.
um, and an actual legal defense they made in court um, as to whether or not, if you say it with a question mark, can it be libel? um, I don't
I
think the question mark can possibly be that powerful.
Yeah, doesn't seem like it. Doesn't seem like it. Now we can broaden out. I will acknowledge, speaking of old Tuckums, I did not consume any quote unquote conservative media coverage of the debate. My, I think, pretty safe assumption is they were like, Trump murdered him.
Yeah,
So we'll leave that for what it is. I did like I said, I poked in, I checked about, read some articles, and really, it did seem like the overwhelming reaction was like hair on fire panic. And that's what's being reported by people who are like quote unquote insiders in the Democratic Party, that amongst the party, full on panic. What do we do? Do we replace? And and this is a genuine question, folks. I don't know what my answer is going to be from Kyle, but I want to ask you a question regarding the debate itself. Assuming the reporting's been accurate and Biden gave, according to his ethos, reasonable policy answers and comments, and had a hard time communicating clearly and gave an overall poor performance as far as the mechanical part of debating, the actual talk. Um, and then Trump lied with practically every word that came out of his mouth. You did debate a lot in high school and things like that. If that was the premise, who would win the debate?
So I don't like that you asked that question because Trump would win the debate by rules of every formal debating society, competitive debate society that I was ever a part of. Um, because the way I'll reference Lincoln Douglas debate, which is the common debate in the more common of the two debates in high school level. Um, the affirmative gets up and gives a speech and can say whatever they want. The
Mm,
next person gets up and gives their first rebuttal. By the rules of debate, anything that the rebuttal doesn't address that was in the first affirmative is considered fact.
okay,
So, by the rules of debate, any lie that Biden didn't call out
there's a
is
point for Trump.
is a point for Trump. The judge has to consider that true and accepted. Whether or not the judge knows independently that it is, by the rules
Hmm.
of debate, they have to accept that as a true fact accepted by both parties in the debate when they're weighing who won.
Okay,
Um,
well, hold on. So far, I've taken away two things. We should not follow those fucking rules for presidential debates. That's a horrible plan, right? I think we can just objectively, just right now, that no, bad, bad. Don't do this. This is a bad way to look at this. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry. That's the first big takeaway. Fuck that. But now your turn again. Sorry.
yeah, I mean, I wasn't really going to make an additional point. I was just going to emphasize that from the reporting, Biden didn't do a lot of fact checking Trump. Um, CNN, as a matter
Yeah.
of policy, didn't do any. Uh,
And as
so
the news organization involved in this particular context, I do have a lot of disappointment in Sienna for that choice. Like I sort of understand why they made it, but I believe this is the logic, and I believe that this is why this is part of why we're fucked right now, which is the logic. CNN's logic is, well, if we fact check live, we're going to fact check one person a lot more than the other person, and it's going to look like we're biased. And I just want to grab them around the neck and be like, you're biased either like the same problem works the other way.
mhm.
So then you
it's
just have to make a decision whether or not you're going to like encourage truth. You know what I mean? Like I don't know. Like
yeah.
help me
I
out
mean,
here.
I would put it one of two ways. Um, and it's really a semantic difference, not in the spirit, not a difference in the spirit of the point I'm trying to make, which is either it is okay to be biased towards the truth, or defending the truth is inherently not a bias.
I like that. I like that, and I don't care which one. I think it should be the second one. That is my gut, particularly for a journalist, right? Like that
It's
seems like real tied
literally
together to me.
the
Yeah.
kind of the purpose of the fifth estate is to be an an impartial arbiter of truth to the masses.
Yeah. And a truth-seeking organization and disseminate, right? Like, and they're just
Yeah,
like,
I mean, you can make arguments about how much they have a duty to actively investigate the truth, but certainly when
mhm.
you're aware of the truth, to allow falsehood to continue to be the accepted answer to a question as a news organization is a failure.
So conclusion number one for me is CNN lost the. I'm mad at them.
Yes,
According to rules of academic debate, Trump won the debate. I don't think that's a good way to look at the presidential debate, but I think it's fair to bring up, right?
correct. Yes, from a standpoint of like debating with rules and a scorecard, by all of the systems I am familiar with, Trump would have won that debate.
Now, let's look at how I think, or let me posit a theory on how the average American should look at a presidential debate, which will not be the what was it, Lincoln Douglas approach. It will not be that.
Yeah.
And I would say, who makes better points, who is not completely full of shit, that person should win the debate. You may understand that I am coming from a bias at this point, but just no, really, if I'm choosing the president, like the person being completely dishonest, all the other person has to do is breathe, right? Like I feel like they win the debate, right? And I'm not saying like they win the debate and that means they did a good job. Like this is where it helps to follow sports, I feel like, because two teams can play bad, one of them still has to win, right? So when you tell a story of the game, I don't like usually the lead isn't the team that won played bad, unless it's they played bad, still won. And that was so I at least think that's a fair way to tell the story of the debate. I don't think it's the only one, right?
Hmm.
But news the media has to accept that the way they tell the story matters. I think they have at this point, right? Like so I don't have to prove that point. And so much of the coverage was Trump won the debate, right? Trump won. Biden failed. And it's like, why I, why wasn't some of it at least or more of it like, hey, like Biden did bad, but actually still won because Trump's performance was atrocious and dangerous and gross. Like and that was like that for me, that should have been the overwhelming version of the story because that's the closest thing to true in my mind, but I understand people disagree with. You know what I mean? But like the fact that like everything was like my hair's on fire. We need to try to get this guy off the ticket. I'm like, it was 90 minutes. He had a bad night. Like, this seems kind of insane to me at this point. 2 years ago, in let's replace the 80-year-old. That sounds awesome. You know what I mean? But like Democrats, what y'all fuckers doing? We can't be having this talk now. Like you needed to have that talk then, unless he has a major medical thing, and then we got a straight excuse. We can just walk him out, right? But like other than that, like guys, oof, man, holy God. I can't believe like Lawrence O'Donnell, who does on MSNBC, I believe, had this kind of take also. So there are at least some people with it. I didn't listen to everyone because, like I said, like I listened to a few and I was like, I can't do this anymore.
Hmm.
Also, I'm not a big the media is fucking up the world guy, generally speaking. I think there are arguments for it, but I don't like to take the accountability away from the people, right? However, I really feel like this is their fault
Okay.
because, and we talked about it before the debate. I was getting really frustrated because the way they were telling the story before the debate was Biden has to kill this. Like this is his
Hmm.
chance. So when that happened, when that is how you were leading into the debate, you have the logical continuation of the story is, oh my God, he failed. Like you set it up so the stakes were higher for him, and just because you decided to tell the story that way, like I just it feels like I think they're making
I
dangerous choices with democracy.
so I would I think there are two things I would want to address. The first is that you are absolutely correct. The media coverage of the debate is turning it into more of a loss for Biden and the left than it ought to be. Like it shouldn't be it certainly shouldn't be as big a loss as they're playing it as. And people are hearing that
Mhm.
it's that big a loss and then just believing that it's that big a loss because that's how people are,
Yeah.
unfortunately. Um, so I would agree with you as far as that point that the media certainly has some culpability with making this a bigger problem than it should be. Then going back and looking at the actual debate and seeing how big of a problem should it be, I think I would argue that everybody lost the debate, and by everybody I mean Trump, uh, Biden, Trump's team, Biden's team, and CNN. Everybody lost that debate. Um, Trump told more than 30 proven lies that CNN called out zero of them. That looks bad for a news organization. Biden's performance, I tend to agree with a lot of the people who said he was probably overcoached because when Biden is good is when he's off the cuff. And
Yeah,
they
100%.
probably should have left more room for that. And because
This
you could watch him from the what I saw while my wife was watching, um, and what I've seen since, he was working very hard. Biden was working very hard to remember what he was supposed to say about a thing.
he was
And
thinking too damn much.
and I
Yeah.
am concerned about how hard it was for him to remember what he was supposed to say about a thing like that. I think there is a legitimate concern about that. I don't think a
Yeah, I think
president does as much as a lot of people. Certainly, he doesn't do as much
yeah.
without other people's input as people seem to think. Like, oh, I forgot this thing. Yeah, there's going to be someone standing right next to him who didn't forget that thing because it's their job to remember that thing.
Yes,
Like,
very much so. And
um,
the thing is, like, if he's having a night like that, like they were saying he had a cold or something, if he's and they're like, well, what if it was an important meeting? It's like, well, they'd reschedule the meeting. He's the president of the United
yeah,
States. Like, he can just do that, guys. This isn't, like we don't have to make up problems. We have enough. You know what I mean? Listen, the biggest weakness Biden has, arguably, I might argue, like the only weakness Biden has is that he's old and not good at talking. So I guess two. I think they're related. But the not good at talking thing has been a lifelong thing. I think that probably backs up your point that he was overcoached because I think he probably has to think about talking right. Because this is something I have to do also. If I need to enunciate, if I need to not mumble, I have to think about not mumbling. So that's taking up a little bit of my RAM. You know what I mean? So I'm not as good as I would usually be at everything else because a little bit is sitting there going like enunciate, enunciate. So I understand how that would. Not even like I'm not making an excuse for him. I'm just agreeing with your point that like
hmm
I think he was poorly dressed. I think they one and we were talking about this beforehand. Like I was listening to people give like 3 sentence answers. It's like give them a sentence and then let them cook. You know what I mean? Like
yeah,
give them a sentence. Maybe just give them a sentence. Sometimes the sentence is going to be all you need. It's going to be a mic drop. And if you guys can't figure it out, like hire some liberal comedians. I mean, like I don't know what to tell you, but like he needs better writers. Like no shit. Like this is it was snappy, snappy comebacks, little jabs. He's good at that. When
yeah.
grandpa gives him a little like 1-2, like that's when he's at his best. I heard his next thing, his
The campaign
his
stop in South Carolina or
yeah, the
whatever.
next campaign stuff,
Yeah.
and he was like rock star grandpa again. Like
hmm
it's
I
like
so I don't know that this is a true statement at all, but I feel like it might be true, so I want to say it. I think their major failure in the week leading up to the debate when they were coaching him at Camp David is that they didn't adjust his sleep schedule because I think he was up 3 hours past his bedtime.
I mean, it's certainly on there. It's certainly on the table as a distinct possibility. He was not a listen. We've seen him at his best. That was not him at his best. Like
Yeah,
that. That is the worst performance I've ever seen him give in his political career. Now, I have not watched every performance of his political career, far fucking from it. But like that was, I've watched, I've watched multiple State of Union addresses now. I've watched him give a ton of like, at least highlights from a ton of speeches, and like, yeah, he gets a little rude sometimes, definitely. But that was consistent his worst. Like usually it's a bunch of good, and then like some cherries of shit.
yeah,
That
yeah.
was just like,
One end of a sentence or one little turn of phrase that he stumbles over.
yeah, one name or something like like really honestly pretty normal stuff for people who aren't gifted at that stuff, which he clearly isn't. Like he's a grinder when it comes to that shit, right? Like to go back to the sports analogy, like you get to people who are just like, you know, naturally gifted, just beautifully athletic, and they don't really need to like be good at it or work at it really hard, right? They don't have to do the daily grind. Sometimes you get a person like that who also is a grinder, and then you get shit like Michael Jordan, Like, but
Yeah.
Biden's not Michael Jordan. Obama was a lot closer to Michael Jordan because I think he was both a natural, particularly as far as oration goes, a natural talent and a grinder. But Biden's a stutterer who is and not like a supernaturally charismatic, but he's likable. But he's not like grandiose or like he doesn't fill a room. It doesn't seem to me. But like he's really the guy who I would want to have a beer with, as opposed to this nonsense that Trump was, which never made sense because he's an elitist billionaire, fucking like reality TV star. He's not an everyman in any way. Like, and Biden's not either. But like, he's to me, he's a lot fucking closer. Like, you got to have a conversation with him where I wouldn't want to shoot myself in the head. So, easy choice for me on the who would you drink with paradigm of the election. I think people would be surprised by that. It's like I don't know how you guys twist your perceptions sufficiently to make Trump an everyday. I don't know how you managed to do that. It is insane.
Well, the thing is, they're working from the paradigm that the American everyman is a bigot who, you know, God, guns, and a border wall.
I can't disagree that that's their paradigm.